Welcome to Whispers and Fire audiobooks, where cold whispers meet burning hearts. In the quiet of winter, every whisper carries a story, and every story carries a spark. This is Whispers and Fire audiobooks. Spring arrives in Maine like a promise, soft, unexpected, and full of new beginnings. For Jake and Tracy, it's more than a change in weather. It's a shift in their hearts. Jake is stepping into a version of himself he never believed he could be: steady, capable, worthy of love. Tracy is learning to let joy back in, to trust the future, to believe that life can bloom again after loss. In this episode, their connection becomes something undeniable, something tender, something real, and something that asks them both to be brave. This is episode 4, where healing becomes love, and love becomes possibility. Legal disclaimer. This novel presents a work of fiction. The story, including all characters, plot lines, and settings, is completely fabricated and not based on any specific real-life individuals, historical events, or actual locations, past, present, or future. No representation is made regarding the accuracy of any events depicted, and any opinions expressed are those of the fictional characters, not the creator. This story is for entertainment purposes only. Content warning and resources. Pinned by creator J. H. D. Langren. This novel discusses mature themes including trauma, PTSD, past suicidal ideation, domestic violence, and institutional corruption. If these topics are difficult for you, please prioritize your well-being. You are not alone. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. Every country has local support lines. Check your region's emergency and mental health services for the most accurate numbers. Remember, help is available worldwide. If your country isn't listed, please search online for local hotlines or emergency services in your area. You deserve support and safety. Previously in the legacy of Winter's rescue, Jake Lang has walked a long road from the frozen ditch where Tracy first found him. He's rebuilt his strength, his purpose, and his place in the world, step by step, day by day, with Tracy at his side. Together, they've turned survival into healing, healing into partnership, and partnership into something deeper than either of them expected. Jake has faced his nightmares. Tracy has faced her grief. And slowly, they've built a life filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet miracle of second chances. But in the last episode, something changed. Jake didn't just find a future, he chose one. He chose her. And now, as spring arrives in coastal Maine, everything they've built is about to grow into something bigger, brighter, and more permanent than either of them ever imagined. If you want the full history of the legacy of Winter's rescue, listen to episode 1 to 3 on my channel. Roots and Wings. May brought a transformation to coastal Maine that felt almost miraculous after the long, brutal winter. The landscape exploded with life, the trees leafing out in shades of green so vivid they seemed unreal, wildflowers carpeting the fields along Route 1, the ocean losing its gray, hostile edge and turning almost Mediterranean blue under the warming sun. The air lost its knife edge and became something soft, welcoming, and full of promise. Jake found himself noticing these things now. It was the elegant beauty of the world, the changing seasons, the simple pleasure of warmth on his skin. For so long, he'd moved through the world with his head down, focused only on survival, on the next meal, the next shelter, the next moment. But Tracy had taught him to look up, to see, and to appreciate. They were walking along the harbor one Saturday morning, hand in hand, coffee cups from their favorite cafe warming their palms. It had become a weekend ritual, this slow, meandering walk with no destination, just being together in the world, observing the town waking up around them. "Emily's working out really well," Jake said, watching a sailboat glide across the harbor, its white sail brilliant against the blue water. "She's organized 3 months' worth of my chaos in 2 weeks. I don't know how I functioned without an assistant." "You functioned poorly," Tracy said with a smile. "You double-booked yourself, forgot meetings, lost invoices. It was a disaster." "Thanks for the reminder. Just keeping you humble." She squeezed his hand. "But seriously, I'm glad it's working out." Emily's a good person, and she clearly worships you. You should hear how she talks about her boss when she calls Jenna Mr. Lang is so professional. Mr. Lang has such innovative ideas. Mr. Lang is changing the industry. Jake felt heat creep up his neck. She doesn't say that. She absolutely does. You've made quite an impression on her and on everyone else, for that matter. Ray told me yesterday that you're the best thing that's happened to the industrial park in decades. His words, not mine. Ray's biased. He's become a friend. Friends can also tell the truth. Tracy stopped walking, turning to face him. They were on a quiet section of the boardwalk, boats bobbing in the water behind them, seagulls wheeling overhead. Jake, you need to accept that you're actually good at this. Not just competent, but genuinely excellent. Your reputation is spreading. You're getting calls from businesses 2 hours away. The police refer people to you. Colonel Davenport brags about you to anyone who'll listen. I just do the work. You do exceptional work, with integrity, thoroughness, and genuine care for your clients' well-being. That's rare. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle on his scarred cheek. I'm so proud of you, of who you've become, of who you were all along, underneath the survival mode. Jake pulled her close, kissing her softly, not caring that they were in public, that people were walking past. For months ago, he would have been too self-conscious, too worried about his scars, about people staring. But Tracy had taught him that their love was nothing to hide. I couldn't have done any of it without you, he said against her lips. You know that, right? We did it together. Tracy smiled. That's what partners do. They continued their walk, eventually circling back toward where they'd parked. As they passed a jewelry store, it was a small, elegant shop with a window display of engagement rings that caught the morning light. Jake felt Tracy's step slow slightly, her eyes drawn to the display before she deliberately looked away. It was the third time in as many weeks that Jake had caught her glancing at engagement rings. She always looked away quickly, never said anything, never pressured him. But the message was clear. She was ready. Ready for the next step, for permanent commitment, for marriage. God help him, so was he. But he wanted to do it right. Not just propose on impulse, but create a moment worthy of what they meant to each other. Something that honored their journey, their love, the life they were building together. He just needed to figure out what that moment should be. Jake's therapy sessions had evolved over the months from painful excavation of trauma to something more constructive. He was busy processing, integrating, learning to live with the grief rather than being consumed by it. His therapist, Dr. Sarah Winters, was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an unshakable calm that reminded him of the best officers he'd served under. Tell me about the nightmares, she said during his session that Tuesday. How frequently are they occurring now? Maybe once a week, Jake said, settling into the comfortable chair that had become familiar over months of visits. Sometimes less. And when they do come, they're different, less intense. I can usually ground myself back to reality pretty quickly. That's significant progress. What do you attribute the improvement to? Jake thought about it carefully. Dr. Winters never let him get away with surface answers. She pushed him to examine the real reasons, the underlying mechanisms of his healing. Tracy, partly, he said. When I wake up, she's there. She doesn't panic or try to fix it. She just grounds me, reminds me I'm safe. Sometimes we don't even talk. She just holds me until I'm calm again. That's healthy partnership. What else? Purpose. The word came easily now, though 6 months ago Jake wouldn't have believed it could. I have work that matters. People depending on me. Reasons to get out of bed beyond just surviving another day. That makes it easier to fight through the bad moments because I have something worth fighting for. What about the guilt? The survivor's guilt we've been working through? Jake was quiet for a moment, checking in with himself honestly. Still there. Probably always will be. But it's not consuming anymore. I'm learning to carry it differently. Mike, Rick, and Davis, they're part of me. Their loss will always hurt. But Dr. Winters, they wouldn't want me to waste my life drowning in grief. They'd want me to live, to be happy, to build something meaningful. How do you know that? Because I knew them. Mike was the one always cracking jokes, trying to keep morale up even in terrible situations. Rick talked about his daughter constantly, about the life he wanted her to have. Davis was brilliant, always learning, always pushing himself to be better. Jake's voice was steady, remembering them without being destroyed by the memory. They loved life, even in a war zone. They'd be pissed if I was wasting mine. Dr. Winters smiled. That's a healthy perspective, Jake. You're honoring them by living well, not by suffering. Tracy says the same thing. Tracy sounds like a wise woman. How are things between you two? Good. Really good, actually. Jake found himself smiling. We're talking about long-term plans. Maybe building a house together, or renovating the current one. She wants to expand her business into new markets. I'm growing mine. We're building a life. A real life. That's wonderful. Do you feel ready for that level of commitment? Yeah. Jake didn't hesitate. I love her. I want a future with her. I'm ready to make that official. Official meaning? Marriage. Saying it out loud felt right, felt solid. I'm going to ask her to marry me. I just need to figure out when and how. Dr. Winters leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. That's a significant step. What makes you feel ready now, when 6 months ago you were still struggling with basic daily functioning? 6 months ago, I didn't believe I had anything to offer. I thought I was broken beyond repair, that anyone who cared about me was making a mistake. Jake met her eyes. But I've put in the work. I've faced the trauma, processed the grief, built a new life. I'm not the same man Tracy found in that ditch. I'm not even the same man I was 3 months ago. I'm becoming whole. Not undamaged, I'll never be undamaged. But whole in a different way. Complete. Does Tracy see that? She saw it before I did. She's been patient, waiting for me to catch up to what she already knew, that I was worth saving, worth loving, worth building a future with. She sounds like quite a woman. She is. Jake's smile widened. She absolutely is. The Outdoor and Off-Road Expo was being held in Portland over Memorial Day weekend, and when Tracy saw the advertisement, her eyes had lit up with genuine excitement. We should go, she'd said, showing him the poster. When's the last time you did something just for fun? Not work, not obligations, just enjoyment. Jake had considered. Define just for fun. Oh my God, you're hopeless. But she was laughing. Jake, you need hobbies. Interests outside of work and me. Things that make you happy, just because they make you happy. You make me happy. That's sweet, but insufficient. Come on, it's vehicles, outdoor gear, and demonstrations. This is right up your alley. We're going. So they went, driving down to Portland on Saturday morning in Jake's truck, windows down, spring air rushing through, music playing. It was a comfortable mix of Tracy's jazz and Jake's classic rock, their tastes blending like everything else in their life. The expo was held in a massive convention center and sprawling outdoor grounds. Inside were vendors displaying everything from camping gear to high-tech GPS systems. Outside, there were demonstration tracks for ATVs and off-road vehicles, rock climbing walls, archery ranges, and dozens of other activities. Jake felt something unlock in his chest as they walked through the exhibits. This world, the world of outdoor equipment, tactical gear, vehicles built for challenging terrain, this was familiar territory. Not in a painful way, but in a way that reminded him of the parts of the army he'd actually enjoyed. The camaraderie, the technical challenges, the satisfaction of being competent with tools and equipment. Look at this, Tracy said, pulling him toward a display of camping equipment. Remember last month when we talked about maybe taking a camping trip this summer? We could get a proper tent, sleeping bags, all the gear. You want to go camping? Jake was surprised. Tracy struck him as more of a luxury hotel person than a sleeping-on-the-ground person. I used to camp all the time with Michael. We'd take these long trips, just us and a tent, and no cell service for days. Her expression was wistful. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed it. The simplicity of it. The connection to nature. Then let's do it, Jake said. Let's plan a trip. Maybe in July, after the busy season for both our businesses. We could go up to Acadia, find a remote site, just disconnect for a few days. Tracy's face lit up. Really? You'd want to? Absolutely. I was practically raised in the woods. My grandmother had a cabin in Montana. Some of my best memories are from there. Jake squeezed her hand. Let's start planning it. Make it happen. They spent the next hour outfitting themselves for their hypothetical camping trip, Tracy asking 100 questions, Jake explaining gear choices with the ease of someone who actually knew what he was talking about. It felt good to be the expert, to share this knowledge with her, to plan something just for them that had nothing to do with work or obligations. By early afternoon, they'd wandered outside to the demonstration areas. A vendor was offering guided ATV rides through a wooded trail course they'd set up on the expo grounds, and Tracy's eyes gleamed with interest. Want to? She asked. You know how to ride an ATV? No, but you do. You can drive, I'll hold on tight. She grinned. Come on, live a little. Jake couldn't argue with that logic. They signed up for the next available ride, were given helmets and basic safety instructions, and then Jake was straddling a powerful ATV with Tracy's arms wrapped around his waist, her body pressed against his back, her laughter in his ear. Ready, the guide called. Ready, Jake called back, feeling more ready than he'd been for anything in a long time. The trail wound through the woods they'd constructed at the edge of the expo grounds. It wasn't true wilderness, but a reasonable facsimile, with turns and small hills and muddy sections that required careful navigation. Jake handled the ATV with confident ease, muscle memory from military training kicking in, and Tracy's delighted laughter as they splashed through a water crossing made him feel like he could do anything. Halfway through the course, they crested a small hill that overlooked a scenic area the expo organizers had clearly designed to be picturesque. It was a clearing with transplanted trees, artfully arranged rocks, and a view that stretched toward the Portland skyline in the distance. Stop here, Tracy called, and Jake pulled the ATV to a halt. They both climbed off, removing their helmets, and stood looking at the view. It wasn't the Atlantic behind Tracy's house, wasn't the stunning vistas of the vast open desert, but it was beautiful in its own constructed way, and more importantly, it was theirs, this moment, this experience, this shared adventure. This is perfect, Tracy said, her face flushed from the ride, her hair windswept, her eyes bright with joy. Thank you for coming here with me today. Thank you for dragging me here, Jake said. You were right, I needed this. Something just for fun. We should do more things like this. Adventures. Experiences. Not just work and routine, but actual living. I agree. Jake pulled her close, kissing her softly, tasting adventure and possibility on her lips. This, he realized, was the moment. Not the one he'd been planning. There was no carefully chosen restaurant, no perfectly arranged proposal. But this was right. This was them, spontaneous, joyful, choosing adventure together. The ring he'd been carrying in his pocket for the past week suddenly felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. He'd commissioned it 3 weeks ago from a jeweler in Boston that Jenna had recommended, working with the craftsman to create something that would mean everything. Tracy, he said, pulling back slightly. She was still smiling, relaxed and happy. Jake's heart was hammering. This was it. No more waiting, no more planning. Just this moment, right now, with the woman he loved. He lowered himself to one knee in the soft earth of the clearing. Tracy's breath caught, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes immediately filling with tears. Jake pulled the small velvet box from his pocket, opened it with hands that were surprisingly steady, and revealed the ring he'd designed specifically for her. The band was a weave of gold and platinum, the two metals intertwined, symbolizing their two lives coming together, creating something stronger than either metal alone. At its center sat a perfect, luminous emerald, the color of the forest around them, the color of life and growth and renewal. Cradled around the emerald were 3 brilliant diamonds, catching the sunlight and throwing it back in prisms of color. 3 diamonds. For Mike, for Rick, for Davis. The brothers he'd lost, whose memory he was entrusting to Tracy's keeping. The men who would always be part of him, now becoming part of their shared story. Jake looked up at Tracy, seeing his entire future in her tear-filled eyes, and spoke from the deepest part of his heart. Tracy Russell, he began, his voice rough with emotion but steady with certainty. 6 months ago, you found me broken on the side of a road. You could have just called for help and driven away. But you didn't. You brought me home. You gave me shelter when I had none, purpose when I'd lost mine, love when I thought I'd never deserve it again. Tracy was crying openly now, but her smile was radiant, her eyes never leaving his face. You are my rescue and my refuge, Jake continued, the words flowing from a place so deep he hadn't known it existed. You are my safety in a world that felt dangerous, my peace in the chaos, my home after years of being lost. You saw value in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You loved me patiently while I learned to be whole again. You are my strength when I'm weak, my joy when I'm sad, and my future when I couldn't imagine one. He paused, his own vision blurring with tears he didn't try to hide. I want to build a life with you, Tracy. Not just live in the same house or work in the same town, but truly build something together. A home, a family, a legacy. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to weather storms with you, celebrate victories with you, grow old with you. I want to be the man you see when you look at me, the man worthy of your love. Jake lifted the ring slightly, the emerald catching the light, the diamonds sparkling like captured stars. So, I'm asking you, Tracy Russell, will you marry me? Will you be my wife? Will you walk with me, not just until the end of my days, but until the end of time itself? For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The forest was silent. The distant sounds of the expo faded away. There was only Tracy and Jake and this perfect, crystalline moment. Yes, Tracy whispered, her voice breaking with emotion and then louder, more certain, joyful beyond measure. Yes. Yes, Jacob Lang. Yes. Jake stood, his legs somehow steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system, and took her left hand. The ring slid onto her finger as if it had been made for that exact place, which, of course, it had. He'd given the jeweler her ring size, had described her hands, had ensured it would fit perfectly. Tracy held up her hand, watching the way the emerald caught the light, the way the diamonds sparkled, the way the intertwined metals created something beautiful and strong. It's perfect, she breathed. Jake, it's the diamonds. For Mike, Rick, and Davis, he said softly. They're part of me. Now they're part of us. I wanted them here, witnessing this, being part of our promise to each other. Tracy made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him off balance. He caught her, lifting her slightly off the ground, spinning her once in a slow, joyful circle in their clearing, holding the woman who held his entire heart. I love you, she said against his neck. I love you so much, Jake. I can't believe this is real. That you're real. That this is my life. Believe it, Jake said, setting her down but not letting go, never wanting to let go. Because I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now. For better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, all of it. Forever. Forever, Tracy agreed, pulling him down for a kiss that sealed their promise, that tasted of tears and joy and a future they would claim together. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and laughing, they realized they weren't entirely alone. A small crowd had gathered at a distance. It was other expo attendees who'd witnessed the proposal, who were now applauding and cheering. The trail guide was grinning, giving Jake a thumbs up. Tracy laughed, wiping at her tears, holding up her hand so the ring caught the light, and the crowd cheered louder. Jake wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, and for once didn't feel self-conscious about the attention. He was proud to love this woman, proud that she'd said yes, proud of the life they were building together. They made their way back to the ATV, both of them giddy and slightly unsteady, their hands clasped together, Tracy repeatedly looking down at her ring and then up at Jake, as if confirming he was real. I can't believe you had this planned, she said as Jake drove them slowly back toward the starting point. You've been carrying that ring around, waiting for the right moment? For about a week, Jake admitted. I was trying to plan something perfect, a fancy restaurant, romantic setting, everything just right. But then we were here having fun just being us, and it felt perfect. So, I went with my gut. Your gut was right. Tracy kissed his cheek, nearly causing him to drive off the trail. This was perfect. This was us. I wouldn't have wanted anything different. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the expo, though neither of them could have said what they looked at or what they did. They were floating, untethered from the mundane world, existing in that bubble of joy that comes from life-changing moments. Tracy showed her ring to anyone who would look. Jake accepted congratulations from strangers with a grin he couldn't have wiped off his face if he tried. On the drive home, as the sun set in their rearview mirror and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Tracy reached across the console to take Jake's hand, her ring glinting in the fading light. "When should we get married?" she asked, her voice thoughtful. "Big wedding or small? Traditional or something more personal?" "I don't care about any of that," Jake said honestly. "I just want to be married to you. The rest is details." "The details matter, though. This is important. This is us promising forever in front of the people we love."
Jake thought about that.
"Then let's make it about community, about the people who've supported us, who helped us both heal. Jenna, Colonel Davenport, Ray, Emily, Detective O'Donnell, all the people who became our family when we needed one." "At the house?" Tracy suggested. "The cove as a backdrop? It's intimate, personal, and beautiful." "Perfect." Jake squeezed her hand. "Absolutely perfect." They drove in comfortable silence for a few miles, both processing the enormity of what had just happened, before Tracy spoke again. "I need to call my mother and Jenna." "Oh God. Jenna is going to lose her mind. She's been making comments about when you were going to propose for the past month." "Has she?" Jake was amused. "Was I that obvious?" "Only to people who know you well. You've been nervous about something, very distracted. I thought maybe it was work stress." Tracy laughed. "Shows what I know." "I was terrified," Jake admitted. "Not that you'd say no, I was pretty confident you'd say yes. But of screwing up the proposal somehow. Making it awkward or unromantic or wrong." "It was perfect, Jake. The ring, the words, the moment, it was all perfect." "The ring turned out exactly how I imagined it. The jeweler was incredible. I told him what I wanted, the symbolism, and he just understood." "The emerald," Tracy said softly, holding her hand up to watch the stone catch the last of the sunlight. "Why emerald?" "Because it's the color of life," Jake said. "Green, growing things, living things, the forest, renewal. You brought me back to life, Tracy. You helped me grow again after I thought I was dead inside. The emerald is for you, for what you've done for me." Fresh tears spilled down Tracy's cheeks. "And the diamonds are for them. For your brothers. They're witnessing our promise. Being part of our future. I needed them here with us." Jake's voice was thick with emotion. Is that okay? I know some people might think it's morbid, putting that kind of symbolism in an engagement ring." "It's perfect," Tracy interrupted with intense emotion. "It's beautiful and meaningful, and so perfectly you. You're honoring the past while building the future." "I love it, Jake. I love what it represents. I love that they're part of this." They pulled into the driveway, just as full dark settled over the coast. The house, their house, soon to be the place where they'd plan a wedding, was lit from within, warm and welcoming, a beacon of home. Inside, Tracy immediately called her mother, her voice high with excitement. "Mom, I have news." Jake proposed. "Yes, today. At an outdoor expo of all places, but it was perfect. You have to see the ring. Yes, we're thinking summer. Late summer maybe, at the house. You'll help me plan?" "Oh, thank God. I have no idea what I'm doing." Jake listened to her animated conversation while he made them dinner. Tonight was going to be grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, comfort food for a day that had been emotionally intense in the best possible way. He could hear the joy in Tracy's voice, the giddy disbelief that this was real, that they were doing this. His phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Davenport, who Tracy must have already contacted. "Congratulations, son. You're marrying a hell of a woman. Don't screw it up." Jake smiled and texted back. "No plans to, sir." Jenna's text came next, finally. "I've been waiting for you to get your act together. Tracy deserves all the happiness, and so do you. Congratulations to you both." P.S. I'm already planning the engagement party. More texts followed, from Ray, Emily, Dr. Winters. Tracy must have called her too, people from the industrial park, clients who'd become friends. The news was spreading, and with it came an outpouring of genuine happiness that made Jake's chest tight with gratitude. He'd been alone for so long, isolated, untethered, believing he had no one. But somewhere along the way, without quite realizing it was happening, he'd built a community. A network of people who cared about him, who celebrated his victories, who'd stood by him through his healing. He had family again, not blood family, but chosen family, which was just as real. Tracy found him in the kitchen, phone finally silent, and wrapped her arms around him from behind, her cheek pressed against his shoulder blade. "Hey, fiancé," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Hey, fiancé," he replied, turning to pull her close. "How's your mom?" "Over the moon. Already talking about flowers and venues and dresses. I had to remind her we're having it at the house, small and intimate, not some massive production. She can go as big as she wants with the flowers if it makes her happy," Jake said. "As long as I get to marry you at the end of it, I don't care about the details." "You say that now. Wait until you're tasting 17 varieties of cake and debating whether the napkins should be ivory or cream." Jake laughed. "Okay, maybe I care a little about the details, but only the ones that matter. The rest is just the window dressing on the most important thing," Tracy finished. "I know. Me too." They ate their simple dinner curled up on the couch, Tracy's feet in Jake's lap, talking about nothing and everything, the potential wedding dates, whether they should hire a photographer or just let people take pictures, whether Jake should wear his dress uniform or a suit. "The uniform," Tracy said firmly. "You look incredible in it, and it's part of who you are. Part of your story." Jake hesitated. "I haven't worn it since I was discharged. I'm not sure it even fits anymore." "Then we'll get it tailored." "Jake, you're a veteran. You served with honor. You earned the right to wear that uniform. I want you to wear it when we get married, because it represents the courage and sacrifice that made you who you are." "Okay," Jake said, moved by her certainty. "Okay, the uniform it is. I'll wear something simple, elegant but not fussy. Maybe we can go shopping together. Make it an adventure." "I'd like that." Jake ran his hand along her shin, a gentle, absent touch. "When should we do this?" "The wedding." "End of August?" Tracy suggested. "Late summer, before fall weather gets unpredictable. That gives us 3 months to plan, which should be plenty for a small, intimate ceremony." "End of August it is." Jake lifted her hand, kissing the ring that now proclaimed her as his. 3 months until you're Tracy Lang." "Tracy Russell," she corrected. "I'm keeping Russell. It's my identity, my business name. But I'm adding Lang because I want everyone to know I'm yours." "Tracy Russell," Jake repeated, liking the way it sounded. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." The engagement party Jenna insisted on throwing was held 2 weeks later at the warehouse, which Ray had helped transform into something surprisingly elegant with string lights, rented tables, and enough food to feed an army. It seemed like half the business community of Camden showed up, along with police officers Jake had worked with, other security professionals, suppliers Tracy worked with, and a collection of people who'd simply become part of their extended family over the past months. Colonel Davenport gave a speech that had everyone alternating between laughter and tears, talking about the day he'd met Jake, about watching him transform from a quiet, wounded man into a confident professional and leader. "I knew this boy was special," he said, raising his glass. "Knew he'd do great things. I just didn't know he'd also be smart enough to lock down the best woman in Camden. Tracy, you're getting a hell of a husband. Jake, you're getting a hell of a wife. And all of us are privileged to witness this." Tracy's mother spoke next, her voice thick with emotion. "When my daughter lost Michael, I thought she'd never recover. The grief was so profound, the loss so complete. She threw herself into work, built walls around her heart, and I worried she'd never let anyone in again." She looked at Jake with tears in her eyes. "But then you came along, young man. You didn't try to replace what was lost, you offered something new. You saw my daughter not as broken, but as strong. You loved her patiently while you both healed. You gave her back something I thought was gone forever, joy. Thank you for that. Thank you for loving her the way she deserves. Jake could barely speak past the lump in his throat. Thank you for raising someone worth loving, he managed, and Tracy's mother pulled him into the tightest hug. Jenna, of course, had the final word. I've known Tracy since she and Michael first started the business. Watched her build something incredible, watched her survive unimaginable loss, watched her keep going even when every step was agony. She turned to Jake. I've watched you these past months, watched you heal, watched you grow, watched you become the man Tracy needed, the man she deserves. You two found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, and you built something beautiful from broken pieces. That's not just luck, that's love. Real, hard-won, unbreakable love. Congratulations to you both. The party lasted until well past midnight, filled with laughter and dancing and the kind of joy that came from communities celebrating together. Jake, who months ago couldn't have imagined being comfortable in a room full of people, found himself relaxed and happy, accepting congratulations, telling the story of the proposal over and over to people who wanted to hear it. Through it all, Tracy was at his side. She was his partner, his fiancée, his future wife. The woman who'd saved him in every way a person could be saved. When they finally made it home in the early hours of the morning, exhausted and happy, they collapsed on the couch still fully dressed, too tired to make it upstairs. That was perfect, Tracy murmured, her head on Jake's chest, his arms around her. Absolutely perfect. You're perfect, Jake said, his words slurring with exhaustion. I'm the luckiest man alive. I'm pretty lucky too. Tracy tilted her head up to kiss him softly. Thank you for choosing me, for staying, for building this life with me. Always, Jake promised, holding her closer. Always, Tracy. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other and the quiet certainty of forever, while outside the stars wheeled overhead and the ocean kept its eternal rhythm against the shore. Promises in the light. The morning of August 28th dawned with a kind of impossible perfection that made you believe the universe itself was blessing the day. The sky was a flawless, soft blue, the color of forget-me-nots, of hope, of new beginnings. Not a single cloud marred the expanse overhead, and the air carried that particular quality of late summer, warm but not oppressive, touched with the faintest hint of autumn's promise, crystal clear and alive with possibility. Jake stood at the window of what had been the guest room, what would always be the room where he'd first woken up in Tracy's care, where his new life had truly begun, and watched the sun climb over the cove. The water was impossibly calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror, barely rippling in the gentle breeze. Seabirds wheeled lazily overhead, their calls carrying across the stillness. Everything felt suspended, held in a moment of perfect grace. You're supposed to be getting ready, not staring out the window like a lovesick teenager. Jake turned to find Colonel Davenport standing in the doorway, resplendent in his own dress uniform, his navy blues with the insignia and ribbons that spoke of a lifetime of service. The colonel had agreed to serve as Jake's best man, a role that felt simultaneously too grand and exactly right. Just taking it in, Jake said. Making sure it's real. It's real, son. The colonel moved to stand beside him, looking out at the view. Beautiful day. Tracy must have made a deal with whatever weather gods control Maine. She's good at negotiating. Jake smiled, then looked down at himself. He was still in jeans and a t-shirt, his dress uniform waiting on its hanger, pressed to perfection and ready for the transformation. I should get ready. Yes, you should. We've got 2 hours before the ceremony starts, and you look like you just rolled out of bed. The colonel's expression softened. How are you feeling? Nervous? Terrified, Jake admitted. Not about marrying Tracy. That's the one thing I'm absolutely certain about. But about. He gestured vaguely. Everything else. My parents are coming. I haven't seen them in over a year. I don't know what to say to them. The colonel nodded slowly. Jake had told him the story weeks ago, over beers at the waterfront, about his discharge, his family's rejection, the way they'd looked at him like he was already dead. About the phone call from Hawaii, the tentative, Awkward conversation where Jake had invited them to the wedding and his mother had cried, and his father had simply said, "We'll be there." "You don't have to say anything," the colonel advised. "Let them see you. Let them see what you've become. Actions speak louder than words, Jake. Your actions have been speaking volumes for months now. What if they still think I'm broken? Then they're blind." The colonel's voice was firm. "And their opinion doesn't change the truth. You're not broken. You're a fine young man with a good heart, a sharp mind, and a future so bright it's blinding. If they can't see that, it's their loss." Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Thank you, sir. For everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For giving me a chance. For being here today. Wouldn't miss it for the world." The colonel clapped him on the shoulder. "Now get in that shower and get dressed. Your bride is probably already halfway to perfect, and you need to catch up." Across the house, in the master bedroom that had become their shared sanctuary, Tracy was indeed well on her way to perfect, though she would have been the first to deny it. Jenna and Tracy's mother, Susan, had taken over the room with the organized chaos of women on a mission. Dresses hung from every available surface. Makeup and hair products covered the vanity. Soft music played from hidden speakers. And in the center of it all stood Tracy, wearing a silk robe and a slightly panicked expression. "I can't believe this is happening," she said for approximately the 100th time that morning. "I'm getting married. Again. To Jake. This is real, right? Tell me this is real." "It's real, sweetheart." Susan Selborne, an elegant woman in her early 60s with Tracy's eyes and her same no-nonsense competence, adjusted the pins in her daughter's hair with gentle precision. "It's wonderful. Jake is a remarkable young man." "He is," Tracy agreed, her voice softening. "He really is. I still can't quite believe he chose me." "Oh, please." Jenna was working on Tracy's makeup, applying it with the light touch. Tracy had requested enhancement, not transformation. "He looks at you like you hung the moon and stars personally. That man is completely, utterly, hopelessly in love with you. And you with him," Susan added. "I see it every time you look at each other. The way you light up when he enters a room. The way he gravitates toward you like you're his North Star." She met Tracy's eyes in the mirror. "This is real love, honey. The kind that lasts. The kind that weathers storms and comes out stronger." Tracy felt tears threatening and blinked them back firmly. "No crying. Not yet. Jenna will kill me if I ruin her makeup work." "Damn right I will." But Jenna's voice was gentle. "Save the tears for the vows.
You'll need them then."
The dress hung on the back of the door, catching the light from the windows and seeming to glow. Tracy had found it in a boutique in Boston 3 weeks after the engagement. It was a simple, elegant sheath of silk charmeuse and ivory that draped like water, with delicate lace cap sleeves and a slight train. Nothing fussy, nothing overdone, just clean lines and timeless beauty. The kind of dress that wouldn't date in photographs, that would look just as perfect in 50 years as it did today. "It's time," Susan said, checking her watch. "Guests are arriving. The string quartet is setting up. Ray is managing the logistics like a military operation. Everything's in place." Tracy took a deep breath, looking at herself in the mirror. Her auburn hair was swept up in an elegant twist, with a few loose tendrils framing her face. The makeup was subtle. It was just enough to enhance her natural features. She looked, she had to admit, beautiful. But more than that, she looked happy, radiant, like a woman who'd found her way home after being lost. "Let's do this," she said, standing with determination. "Let's get me married." Jake stood at the end of the aisle that had been created on the lawn, trying to remember how to breathe. The setup was simple but breathtaking. White chairs arranged in neat rows. It was intimate with only 60 seats, just their closest friends and family, creating an aisle that led to an arch wound with greenery and white flowers. Beyond the arch, the cove stretched out in brilliant blue perfection, sailboats drifting lazily, the horizon lined sharp and clean. The string quartet played softly, Pachelbel's canon filling the air with its timeless beauty. Jake wore his dress uniform, Army service uniform, the brown jacket with its insignia and ribbons, the crisp white shirt, the perfectly knotted tie. The uniform fit perfectly after the tailoring Tracy had insisted on, and wearing it felt both strange and right. This was who he'd been, part of who he still was. The service didn't define him anymore, but it had shaped him, and he wasn't ashamed of that. Colonel Davenport stood beside him in his navy dress blues, a solid presence. On Jake's other side stood Ray Nakamura, who'd been honored to serve as a groomsman, representing the civilian life Jake had built. The three of them, past, present, and future, all in uniform, all standing together. "Breathe, son," the colonel murmured. "You're turning an interesting shade of pale." "I'm fine," Jake said, though his voice betrayed him slightly. "Just ready." The guests were settling in. Jake recognized everyone. There were no strangers here, only people who'd become family over the past 9 months. Jenna sat in the front row, already dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, even though nothing had happened yet. Detective O'Donnell was there, looking uncomfortable in a dress, but smiling warmly. Emily, Jake's assistant, sat with her aunt, both of them beaming. Business associates, neighbors, the staff from the waterfront, the security team from the industrial park, all people whose lives had intersected with Jake and Tracy's, who'd played some role in this journey. His eyes found them, in the front row on Jake's side, were two people he hadn't seen in over a year. His parents. Robert Lang was a tall man, still straight-backed despite being in his mid-50s, with gray threading through his dark hair and lines of hard living etched into his face. He'd been a ranch hand, then a foreman, a man who worked with his hands and didn't have much patience for things he couldn't fix with tools and sweat. Beside him sat Margaret Lang, smaller, quieter, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes already red-rimmed as if she'd been crying before she even arrived. They'd driven from Montana, had arrived late last night, and checked into a hotel in Camden without trying to see Jake beforehand, giving him space. His mother had sent a text. It was simple, just, "We're here. We love you. See you tomorrow." And Jake had stared at those words for an hour before managing to reply, "Thank you for coming." Now, standing at the altar, Jake caught his father's eye. Robert Lang stared at his son for a long time, taking in the uniform, the posture, the confidence that Jake wore like armor. Then, slowly, deliberately, Robert nodded. It was his gesture of acknowledgement, maybe respect, and possibly the beginning of understanding. Jake nodded back, and something in his chest loosened slightly. The music shifted. The guests stood, turning toward the house. In that moment, Jake's entire world narrowed to a single point of focus. Tracy appeared at the top of the lawn, and Jake forgot how to breathe. She was ethereal. The ivory dress caught the sunlight and seemed to glow from within. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was nervous and radiant, and so full of love it made Jake's heart stutter. She carried a simple bouquet of white roses and greenery, and she moved with that unconscious grace that was purely her own. Beside her, offering his arm with obvious pride, was Colonel Davenport, who'd left Jake's side moments ago to fulfill this honor. When Tracy had asked him to walk her down the aisle, to stand in for the father she'd lost years ago, the colonel had actually cried. Now he moved with military precision, but his face was soft with emotion. They proceed down the aisle slowly, Tracy's eyes locked with Jake's, a smile playing at her lips. Jake watched her approach and felt everything else fall away. The nervousness, the fear about his parents, the awareness of all the eyes on him. None of it mattered. There was only Tracy, coming toward him, choosing him and promising him forever. She reached the front, and Colonel Davenport lifted her hand from his arm, placed it carefully in Jake's, and leaned close to whisper something in her ear that made her smile widen. Then he stepped back, relinquishing her, and Tracy turned fully to face Jake. "Hi," she whispered, just for him. "Hi," Jake whispered back, his voice rough with emotion. "You look. You too." Her eyes traveled over his uniform, lingering on the ribbons, the insignia, the evidence of service and sacrifice. So handsome, so perfect. The officiant, she is a woman named Patricia, who is both a justice of the peace and a friend of Jenna's, smiled at them both and began. "Friends and family, We are gathered here on this beautiful day to witness the union of Tracy and Russell and Jacob Michael Lang. The ceremony passed in a blur for Jake. He heard the words love, commitment, partnership, forever, but all he could focus on was Tracy's face, the way the light caught in her hair, the slight tremble of her hands in his, the tears that threatened at the corners of her eyes. Then it was time for vows. They'd written their own, choosing to speak from the heart rather than recite traditional words. Tracy went first, and Jake watched her take a steadying breath before beginning. "Jake," she said, her voice carrying clearly over the assembled guests, over the sound of waves and birdsong. "When I found you on that frozen road, I had no idea I was finding my future. I thought I was just helping someone who needed help. But you gave me something I desperately needed. You gave me purpose again. You reminded me that my life wasn't over just because I'd lost someone I loved. You showed me that healing was possible, that joy could coexist with grief, that opening my heart again wasn't betraying the past, it was honoring the future." Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "You walked into my life broken and proud, and you taught me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up. You asked for work when you needed charity because your dignity mattered more than your comfort. You loved me patiently, giving me space to grieve and heal and figure out who I was without Michael. You never tried to replace what I'd lost, you offered something new, something uniquely yours, something I'll treasure for the rest of my life." Tracy squeezed his hands, her eyes bright with tears that hadn't yet fallen. "I promise to be your partner in every sense. Your refuge when the world is too heavy. Your strength when yours fails. Your home in every storm. I promise to love not just the healed parts of you, but the parts that are still healing. Not just the victories, but the struggles. I promise to stand beside you, to build with you, to grow old with you, and to choose you every single day for the rest of my life." She paused, then added, "You filled the empty spaces in me, Jake. You made my house a home again. You are my love, my best friend, and my heart's truest home. I will spend the rest of my life trying to give you back even a fraction of what you've given me." Jake couldn't speak for a moment, his throat too tight. When he finally found his voice, it came out rough but steady. "Tracy," he began, and the single word held everything, all his love, all his gratitude, all his wonder that this was real. "You found me in the ice, I was a ghost. I was walking through life without purpose, without hope, without any reason to take another step beyond the simple fact that my body hadn't given up yet. I'd lost my brothers, lost my family, lost any sense of who I was or what I was worth. I was dead in every way that mattered. I just hadn't stopped breathing yet." He could feel every eye on him, but he spoke only to her. "Then you stopped and found me. You could have driven past, should have driven past, but you didn't. You stopped. You brought me home. You gave me a place to heal, space to figure out who I could become, and most impossibly, you gave me love when I thought I'd never deserve it again." His voice grew stronger, more certain. "You saw me at my worst, broken, proud, terrified, haunted, and you didn't turn away. You didn't try to fix me or save me or make me into something I wasn't. You just accepted me. All of me. The scars and the nightmares, the grief and the guilt, the man I'd been, and the man I was trying to become. You made me believe I could be whole again. That I was whole, just in a different shape than before." Jake lifted one hand to cup her face, his thumb catching a tear that had escaped. "You are my rescue and my refuge. My peace in the chaos, my light in the darkness, my reason for every breath. You taught a wounded warrior how to live again, how to love, how to believe in tomorrow. I swear to you, Tracy Russell, soon to be Tracy Russelling, that I will spend every day of the rest of my life trying to be the man you see when you look at me." He could barely see her now through his own tears, but he pressed on. "I promise to protect you, not just physically, but emotionally. To be your safe place, your steadfast anchor. I promise to build a life with you that honors both our pasts while reaching toward our future. I promise to weather the storms with you, celebrate the joys, and walk beside you every single day. I promise to love you with everything I have, everything I am, and everything I'll ever become. Because you're not just my future, Tracy. You're my home. I'm never, ever letting you go." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Tracy was crying openly now, and Jake wasn't far behind. Patricia, the officiant, had to clear her throat twice before she could continue. "By the power vested in me by the state of Maine," she said, her own voice thick with emotion, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jake, you may." But Jake was already moving, pulling Tracy into his arms, kissing her with all the love and gratitude and joy that was overflowing from his heart. Tracy kissed him back just as hungrily, her arms around his neck, both of them crying and laughing and not caring one bit that everyone was watching. The guests erupted in applause and cheers. The string quartet launched into something triumphant. Jake and Tracy Lang held each other in the sunlight, sealed by promises that would last forever, beginning the first moments of their marriage exactly as they intended to continue it, together, joyful and unbreakable. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and beaming, Jake rested his forehead against Tracy's and whispered, "Hello, Mrs. Lang." "Hello, husband," Tracy whispered back. "How does it feel?" "Like coming home." The reception was held on the deck and lawn, transformed by Jenna's meticulous planning into something out of a magazine. Long tables draped with white linen, centerpieces of simple wildflowers and candles, string lights that would glow as the sun set, and a small dance floor installed just for the occasion. The food was catered by the waterfront, the owners had insisted, refusing to take no for an answer, and the wedding cake was a 3-tier work of art covered in buttercream flowers. But the real magic was in the atmosphere, the palpable joy that filled the space. This wasn't a formal, stuffy affair. It was a celebration of community, of family chosen and blood, of two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful from broken pieces. Jake and Tracy moved through the crowd hand in hand, accepting congratulations, thanking guests, soaking in the love that surrounded them. Jake's wedding ring, it's a simple band of titanium, strong and unbreakable, matching the platinum in Tracy's caught the light as he gestured, and he kept glancing at it, marveling at its presence.
Married. He was married.
To Tracy, it felt surreal and absolutely right in equal measure. Dinner was served, toasts were made. Jenna spoke about watching Tracy survive and rebuild, about the joy of seeing her find love again. Ray talked about Jake's transformation from the quiet consultant who'd first walked into the warehouse to the confident professional and leader he'd become. Colonel Davenport gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure, talking about duty and honor and the different ways a person could serve. Then it was Jake's father's turn. Robert Lang stood slowly, his expression uncertain, as if he wasn't sure he had the right to speak. But he stood nonetheless, cleared his throat roughly, and began. "I'm not good with words," he said bluntly. "Never have been. I'm a man who works with his hands, who understands horses and cattle better than people. So I'm going to keep this simple." He looked directly at Jake, and his voice, when he continued, was thick with emotion Jake had never heard from him before. "When my son came back from the Middle East, I didn't know how to handle what he'd become. The nightmares, the anger, the grief, I couldn't fix any of it. I'm a man who fixes things. That's what I do. So when I couldn't fix my son," he paused, swallowing hard, "I did the worst thing a father can do. I gave up. I walked away. I told myself he was already gone because it was easier than admitting I didn't know how to help him." Margaret was crying silently beside him, her hand over her mouth. The reception had gone completely silent. "But seeing you today, son," Robert continued, his gaze never leaving Jake's face. "Seeing the man you've become, the business you've built, the woman you've married, the life you've created, I realize I was wrong about everything. You weren't broken. You were healing. You didn't need me to fix you. You just needed support.
Love.
Faith that you'd find your way."
His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Jake.
I'm so damn sorry for abandoning you when you needed me most. For making you feel like you had to be who you were before the war instead of accepting who you'd become. You're remarkable. You're strong and capable, and everything a father should be proud of. I am proud. So incredibly proud. Jake was on his feet before conscious thought, crossing to where his father stood. Robert looked uncertain, braced for rejection, but Jake didn't hesitate. He pulled his father into a remorseful embrace and felt the older man's arms come around him just as tightly, holding on as if afraid to let go. I'm sorry, too, Jake said against his father's shoulder. For shutting you out. For not giving you a chance to understand.
No.
Robert's voice was firm despite the tears. No, this is on me. You were dealing with trauma. I can't imagine. I should have been there. Should have learned, tried harder, done better. That's on me. They stood like that for what seems like forever while Margaret joined them, her arms around both her husband and her son, the family reforming in the light of understanding and forgiveness. When they finally pulled apart, there wasn't a dry eye at the reception. Thank you for coming, Jake said, his voice rough. It means everything. Wild horses couldn't have kept us away, Robert said. Your mother threatened to divorce me if I didn't come. Said if I couldn't see what was right in front of me, I was too blind to be worth keeping. Damn right I did, Margaret said, her voice determined through the tears. She turned to Tracy, who'd been watching the reconciliation with her own tears falling freely. You take care of my boy, and if he gives you any trouble, you call me. I'll set him straight. Yes, ma'am, Tracy said, laughing through her tears. Though I have to say, he's pretty good at taking care of himself and me. That's what I raised him to be, Margaret said with pride. A man who stands on his own 2 feet and takes care of the people he loves. I'm glad he found someone worthy of all that care. I'm glad he found me, Tracy said. Your son is the best man I know. The emotional intensity broke then, shifting back to celebration as the band, it's a local group that played everything from jazz to classic rock, began setting up. Jake returned to Tracy's side, his heart lighter than it had been in years, perhaps ever. The weight of his family's rejection had been lifted, and in its place was the beginning of reconciliation, of healing, of hope. You okay? Tracy asked softly, taking his hand. Yeah, Jake said, surprised to find it was completely true. Yeah, I really am. The dancing began as the sun started its slow descent toward the horizon. Jake led Tracy onto the dance floor for their first dance, moving to a song she'd chosen, At Last by Etta James, slow and romantic and perfect. Jake wasn't a great dancer, he had 2 left feet, actually, but Tracy guided him with patient humor, and they swayed together as the golden light painted everything in shades of amber and rose. I love you, Jake murmured against her ear. So much I don't have words for it. I love you too, Tracy replied. My husband. My wife. Jake pulled back to look at her, memorizing this moment, her face in the golden light, her smile, the way her eyes sparkled with joy. I'm the luckiest man alive. We're both pretty lucky. They danced until the song ended, and then Jenna was pulling Jake away for a dance, and Colonel Davenport was claiming Tracy for the traditional best man dance, which involved a lot of laughter and terrible dance moves and zero grace, but maximum joy. Jake danced with his mother, both of them moving awkwardly, rediscovering how to be mother and son after a year apart. Margaret cried the whole time, apologizing repeatedly, and Jake kept telling her there was nothing to apologize for, that she was here now, and that was what mattered. He danced with Jenna, who told him if he ever hurt Tracy, she'd hunt him down personally. He danced with Detective O'Donnell, who was surprisingly graceful despite claiming she never danced. He danced with Emily, his assistant, who blushed furiously and stepped on his feet 3 times. Through it all, his eyes kept finding Tracy across the dance floor, drawn to her like a compass to north.
His wife.
His partner. His home. As the sun finally set and the string lights came on, creating a canopy of stars overhead, Jake found himself standing at the edge of the deck with Tracy, looking out at the cove. The party continued behind them, the music and laughter and the sounds of celebration, but they took a moment just for themselves. This was perfect, Tracy said, leaning into him. Everything was perfect. You were perfect, Jake corrected. Still are. We did good today. Tracy held up her left hand, admiring her rings, the engagement ring with its emerald and 3 diamonds, now joined by a simple platinum band. Made some promises. Big promises. I intend to keep them, Jake said seriously. Every single one. I know you will. That's who you are. You're a man who keeps his word. Tracy turned in his arms to face him. So, where do we go from here? We're married. Our businesses are thriving. We have this beautiful home and this wonderful community. What's next? Jake considered the question carefully.
I've been thinking about that.
About what we do with everything we've built. I keep coming back to something Colonel Davenport said once, that I should use my platform to help other veterans, people like me who are struggling to transition back to civilian life. You want to expand your consulting to include veteran services? More than that. Jake's mind was already working through the logistics, the possibilities. I want to create something comprehensive. Job training, mental health support, community building, everything I needed when I came home and didn't get. Everything that falls through the cracks of the VA system. Tracy's eyes were shining. Like a foundation.
Yeah.
Like a foundation. Jake pulled her closer. We have resources now, your business success, my growing practice, connections in the community. We could actually make a difference. Help people who are where I was when you found me next to the road in the ice. The Rustling Foundation, Tracy said slowly, testing the name. I love it. I love everything about it. You be willing to invest in this? It wouldn't be profitable. It would be philanthropy. Jake. Tracy cupped his face in her hands. Making money isn't the only thing that matters. Making a difference is just as important. More important, actually. If we can help veterans rebuild their lives, give them the support you didn't have, create pathways for them to find purpose and community. She smiled. That's a legacy worth building. That's how we honor everything you went through, everything you survived. Jake kissed her, long and deep. They're on the deck under the stars with their wedding celebration continuing behind them and the ocean stretching out before them. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me, for seeing the possibilities I couldn't see myself. Thank you for being someone worth believing in." Tracy kissed him again, quick and sweet. Now come on. We need to go and cut the cake, and Jenna will murder us both if we're not there for photos. They rejoined the party, hand in hand, husband and wife, partners in every sense. The celebration continued into the night. Cake and champagne, more dancing, toasts that grew progressively more ridiculous as the alcohol flowed, laughter that rang out across the cove, and probably disturbed half the neighborhood, but nobody cared. At midnight, as the last guests were finally leaving, Jake and Tracy stood on the deck waving goodbye. Colonel Davenport was the last to leave, pulling Jake into a bear hug that spoke volumes. "Proud of you, son," he said. "Not just for today, but for everything. You're going to do great things." "We already are," Jake said, glancing at Tracy. As husband and wife. When the last car had pulled away and the house was finally quiet, Jake swept Tracy up into his arms, making her shriek with surprised laughter. "What are you doing?" "Carrying my bride over the threshold," Jake said, navigating through the door and up the stairs. "It's tradition. We already live here. Doesn't matter. Still counts." He carried her into their bedroom. It was their marriage bedroom now, and set her down gently. "Besides, I wanted to. Let me have this." Tracy smiled, reaching up to loosen his tie. "Have anything you want, husband. You've earned it." They undressed each other slowly, with desire and respect, the exhaustion of the long day mixing with the anticipation of their wedding night. When they finally slipped into bed together, skin on skin, heart against heart, it felt both new and familiar, a continuation of everything they'd already been, and a beginning of everything they'd become. "I love you, Tracy Lang," Jake whispered in the darkness. "I love you, Jacob Lang," Tracy replied. "Forever." "Forever," Jake agreed. And as they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other and the promises they'd made, the stars wheeled overhead and the ocean kept its eternal rhythm, and the future stretched out before them full of possibility and purpose and love that would last beyond time itself. If episode 4 touched you, if Jake and Tracy's journey continues to warm something inside you, please subscribe, like, and share this episode. Your support helps this story reach more people who need a little hope and healing in their day. Before you go, tell me in the comments, what moment in episode 4 stayed with you the most? Tell me what you think is coming next. In the next episode, everything Jake and Tracy have built begins to expand faster, bigger, and more powerfully than either of them imagined. The foundation they started as a simple act of gratitude becomes something with real weight, real reach, and real consequences. But with growth comes pressure. With visibility comes risk. And with every new life they touch, the world starts watching them, not all of it kindly. Episode 5 is where their dream becomes a force, and where the first cracks of danger begin to show.